healing, and it's what our bodies are supposed to be doing. It's about lacto fermentation. This woman, the video was put out April of 2014. She's of a Hungarian background, and so she grew up doing this, preparing cabbage. She calls cabbage the poor man's medicine or something like that. But it actually takes care of the whole body. It takes care of our entire systems. She said that, I think she worked as a dental technician or in the dentist's office. She said 1 out of 3 children is a GAPS child. GAPS means gut and 2 things. The P stands for 2 different things. GAPS and psychology, S, what's the S for? Syndrome. Gut and psychology syndrome, or gut and physiology syndrome. 1 out of every 3 children. She did pediatric dentistry. She said mental issues come from the gut. Okay. What I watched, and I'm going to make it, this video is going to be brief. I watched a brief amount, and in that time I learned that in our gut starts autoimmune diseases. She said autoimmune isn't a disease, it's an imbalance of the gut flora and fauna. And the flora and fauna means the good and bad bacteria in the gut. So it's an imbalance in the gut. And what was it? Autoimmune disorder, and it's just a whole lot. She talks about a woman named Elaine Gottschall, who is their gut GAPS practitioners. They help people to learn how to prepare these foods for their families. They go into their homes and watch what they eat and what their food practices are, and they can tell them what is happening physiologically and psychologically to them because of their food. So I started a video. I'm starting a video series on this. I made a video together with Lita Lum from the Lita Lum Apothecary, and she talked about making her own fermented vegetables. And that's how I got started on learning about this. All I've known about fermented vegetables is sauerkraut is very good for you. I knew it's the probiotics for our body. And I don't want to get off on that. I'm trying to give you just a general overall with this. She said your health is literally going down the toilet. She said we have the sickest people than we've ever had, which we all know. We know that. So this fermented foods, they used to put up fermented foods so that they could eat throughout the winter. They didn't have refrigeration. So fermenting foods is the refrigeration process for when you don't have refrigeration. And she says many places in the world still use this. And I've even heard of fermented bread. Okay, I've heard of bread, and then she mentions kielbasa, which she calls kolbas, and she says in America it's called kielbasa. That's what I grew up, I'm Slovenian. Slovenian sausages they're smoked sausages. They're dried. Okay, they ferment them. That's a fermentation process. Anything that I think that uses salt is a fermenting process. And the fermenting vegetables is very simple. You use salt and water. But she says what takes place under the cabbage leaves when it's fermenting is the process. That's the star of the show. So that when you eat it, the microbes begin the process of digestion. They break down the proteins in our stomachs. She says diabetics have a hard time digesting their foods because they need things to go light on their pancreas. And if they don't have fermented foods in their diet, it's called lacto fermentation. If they don't have fermented foods, their body has to do all that breaking down, which is very stressful on the pancreas, and I've heard of that. So she talks about, she gets into details about the toilet, about it going through your digestive system and how it happens in the stomach, okay? And I think that the stomach is like the manufacturing plant for our body. She mentioned breaking down foods and breaking down the proteins. So when we eat it, there's a whole science to it. This process, fermentation process, was discovered 200 BC by the Chinese. Now this is how it got. Do you want to hear this? I wonder if you do. How they found out. The workers would go to work and they would all throw their, they didn't have refrigeration, so they had a barrel, and they all threw their foods in, each of them threw their foods into a barrel. Now they're coming from similar homes with similar vegetables, access to similar meats, so they probably have the same food going into this barrel. Now we would consider that gross, right? Well, as time went on, they thought it took on a different taste and a different consistency, which they thought was just yummy. And so they started to do this, to process foods in barrels like that. You know how pickles get processed in a brine in water and salt. And I'm going to tell you about something about pickles, and I'll make a note so I don't forget before you leave. There's something important to know about pickles. I grew up, I love pickles, okay? I used to eat them at, whenever I got a corned beef sandwich, I love my pickles. And so, anyway, if you make this sauerkraut, okay, so she gets into the process of making sauerkraut. Now she said I think she said New York. The other day I thought she said California. It's on one of the coasts. They give 1 teaspoon of this sauerkraut to newborn babies to balance the gut, just to balance it out right off the bat, and they don't get colic or anything like that. You would keep a child totally healthy if you started at birth. 1 teaspoon has trillions of microbes, not thousands, but trillions. And she talked about how you get yogurt in the store and you think you're getting these probiotics. They have about 2, okay? Because she said they don't have the time to stand over them and do this and that. Now, the way she ferments her cabbage is different from the way Lita does it and the way that I was going to do it, which I think is a perfectly fine way. But if you actually, she grew up stomping on the cabbage like they stomp on grapes. It's a process of breaking it down. And then the water and the salt can do more from it. If you can probably get millions more or trillions more bacteria out of the cabbage if you watch this video and learn how to process it her way, which I'll be doing that. And I'll be showing you that in the future. I've got coffee here. I'm already exhausted. I made a video before this on drinking. I had some black savin tea. Now, the things that fermentation does for you, it helps digestion. It controls yeast, which yeast is a whole disorder in itself. There was a book this thick in the 1970s, I believe, called Yeast. The yeast book. Yeast causes all kinds of problems, and it all begins in the gut. It's because our digestive processes aren't taking care of these microbes. She mentions the plaque on the teeth. She says you go to the doctor and they talk about calculus. Remember that word calculus that the dentist says, oh, there's calculus on your teeth? She said you could brush and floss and brush all day, and when you go to bed, you're still going to wake up with plaque on the teeth because it's undigested bacteria from the gut, and it will always be there. She said if you eat this cabbage, you will never have plaque on your teeth again. Those are strong words, will never. It balances the gut flora. It alkalizes and boosts the immune system. Of course, when you're alkaline, you're healthy. When you're in a acid situation, you're in the state of ill health. The cabbage is pre-digested in the jar. That's how it helps a diabetic, and it would help anybody who's looking to go easier on their pancreas, because the pancreas is what has to break down the raw foods that we eat. It turns out that the foods that we think we're really cooking, they're considered raw because they've never been broken down by microorganisms. It's a great video to watch. 90% of our immune system is in the gut. Autoimmune system is not a disease, it's the imbalance of gut flora. Autoimmune. The microbes in the teeth she talks about, she says, what else? I only watched a couple minutes of this. Then she will get further into the breakdown of how it goes through the body, through the bowels, and comes out in the toilet. She loves talking about the toilet. If you're not eating cabbage, fermented foods, you're losing all kinds of things out of the toilet, in the toilet, and if you are, the body is breaking down and getting rid of things that should be going down the toilet. Okay? So then she will go into showing us how. What did I want to say? They make jams too. I want to learn how to do that. And every third child is a GAPS. I've seen that GAPS information on the internet. Gut and physiology, or gut and psychology. The physiology would be the autoimmune disorders, and the psychology would be your autism and other mental illnesses. And the gut produces 90, all of our B vitamins are produced in our guts, and that's why we're going to be low on that's why it's going to cause mental and emotional illness or disorders, because you need the B vitamins are the feel-good vitamins. Turned out I saw another video the other day that 90% of our serotonin is manufactured in the gut. Serotonin is the feel-good hormone. There's road rage. Everybody's angry. It makes sense. I wanted to talk about that pickles before I left in this video. And I'm going to watch more of her video and make more videos for you about it as I learn. Okay, pickles that are the normal process of producing pickles. People use something called alum powder, A-L-U-M. It's available in regular grocery stores, along with the mason jars and the wax rings and things that they sell for people to make pickles. And I've heard that a lot of people don't like this and don't agree with it because alum makes the pickles real crisp. Alum, it's not hard to figure out. The derivative of the root word is aluminum. Alum is aluminum. So there's not a whole lot of, I do some things right in the eating department. I don't use a microwave and haven't owned one in my home for about 4 years or longer. So I don't destroy any nutrition that is there with the microwave. I don't eat pork. I can't say never because I'll have some once in a blue moon. If it happens to be there and I'm hungry, I'm going to eat it sometimes. But on the whole, I don't eat pork. I don't believe it's digestible. I don't think it's the right thing to do. But I think if you had fermented foods, you could be digesting your pork. And that's why I think they got away with it in the old country and still get away with it, because they usually have pork with sauerkraut. And it only makes sense. It helps break down foods. So even if you're not supposed to be eating it for whatever reason, because of the physiology of the pig, which is very much like ours, or if it's because of religious reasons, the sauerkraut would help you to break it down. So anyway, the things I do right is I don't eat pickles because I believe the fact that alum comes from aluminum. And aluminum is a causative factor in Alzheimer's, and I'm going to tell you why it's a factor. Alzheimer's is a collection of metals on the base of the back of the brain, okay, on the base of the brain. But in order for the aluminum to gather there, and it comes from deodorant and toothpaste, and I still use a cheap toothpaste because of the cost factor, but I don't wear deodorant, or I buy Tom's, which has no aluminum in it. And today I've got that on, and it's lavender. It actually smells manly. My husband uses that. I got him off of the deodorant with the aluminum in it, which he took an interest. He wanted to keep his brain healthy and his mind sharp. So today I put some on. I don't always wear deodorant, but I did. So I avoid aluminum. Okay. So I was talking about, the things I do right, and then I was talking about let's see how sharp my brain is. You have to have the absence of certain minerals at the back of the brain in order for the aluminum and other metals to collect on the brain. And how I see it as a magnet, okay, I see it as a magnetic field. And specifically, if you're missing the mineral boron, in the spaces in the brain where you're missing boron, those receptors will collect aluminum. And it's got to come from within the body. Everything we eat eventually goes into the bloodstream, like the black salve that I put in my tea this morning. Everything goes into the bloodstream and will find a place. And if there's receptors that receive certain things naturally, if there's a process of this happening, then that's what's going to happen. And that is what happens. Aluminum will be collected at the back of the brain. And it only makes sense. After you learn about some things, they only make sense. So I don't eat pickles. And if they would bake a pickle, I guess that alum makes them crisp because they've got aluminum particles that create the crispness for the pickles, which bums out a lot of people in different specific communities who really like their pickles and pride themselves on having the most crisp pickles. they get bummed about this, because you know there's nothing worse than a saggy pickle. You know, that's not fun. So if they make pickles with something other than alum, that's what I would buy, and I'll find that out and let you know. I think with this, I'm going to be back this afternoon. You know, I'm watching General Hospital, and I'm acting it out for you. That's at my behind the scenes channel, and I might stream it live at this channel in case you don't catch it there. But I have 4 YouTube channels. This is my regular one. Then I have behind the scenes, which I'm streaming this video to my behind the scenes.